Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Today, we are going to launch a new initiative to help you prepare as well as ace the civil services examination. We'll be launching an initiative by the name of Economy Made Easy. In this initiative, we'll be taking certain important current affairs events that are taking place, and we will be analyzing these events. And to begin with, today's video, we will have a discussion regarding a very important announcement done by the Finance Ministry regarding the highest number of IT returns filed after the deadline of 31st July got over very recently. Now, what is the meaning of the IT returns here? Please understand this. Once the financial year is over, the Government of India wants you to file the documents showing the proof of your investments, and if you have any amount of tax that you owe to the Government of India on any of the income that you have earned, if you want to pay the taxes to Government of India, the government is expecting you to make this particular payment within certain deadline. And for the financial year 23 and 24, the deadline that was set up by the Government of India was the 31st July 2024. Very recently, the deadline got over, and after that, certain data has been provided by the tax officials, or basically the Finance Ministry. Now, within the data, there are certain important factual information that you need to understand, as well as concepts that are necessary for the civil services. Now, let's look at the information here. Point number one, the number of IT returns which have been filed are the highest ever. For the financial year 23 and 24, the total number of IT returns filed are 7.2 crore. 7.2 crore, mind you. This particular 7.2 crore number is 7.5% higher compared to the number of IT returns which were filed in the previous financial year. That is, in the financial year 22 and 23, the number of IT returns filed was 6.7 crore. So, the number of IT returns filed has increased by 7.5%. But if you look at one more previous financial year, that is, if you compare 22 and 23 with 21 and 22, the rise in the IT returns filed is much greater. That is, from 22 to 23, the number of IT returns which have been filed have increased by 16%. This is point number one. Point number two, this is very important. The Government of India has been promoting usage of the new tax regime. The new tax regime was introduced under the Finance Act of 2023, and since then, the government has been asking the people or the taxpayer to come under the new tax regime, and according to the guidelines, recent guidelines, the new tax regime by default is the tax regime applicable to the taxpayers. And now the data shows that 72% of the total tax returns that have been filed, that is IT returns that have been filed, 72% of them are filing under the new tax regime. Now, I'm assuming that all of you already know what is the difference between a new tax regime and an old tax regime. If you do not know, please do let me know in the comment section so that I can make a different video or a separate video comparing both the new tax regime as well as the old tax regime. But much more importantly, many of the experts are saying that it's a proof that over a period of time, more and more tax returns or more and more number of taxpayers are preferring the new tax regime compared to the old tax regime. And in the recently concluded budget as well, the Government of India has increased the standard deduction from 50,000 rupees to 75,000 rupees applicable to the taxpayers under the new tax regime. That's a second very important point. Third very important point, this is very important, listen to me carefully. For the first time, the number of taxpayers who are filing the IT returns, understand the data here, the government says more than 5.85 million taxpayers, more than 5.85 million taxpayers are filing IT returns for the first time ever. And what is the importance of this particular data? Because if you ask me, out of all the points that I'm discussing here, this is one of the most important points. In fact, the most important. Reason being, whenever more and more taxpayers will come under the taxation system, more number of tax filings are done, returns are filed, it represents widening of the tax base. It simply represents widening of the tax base. The tax base essentially refers to the object. It refers to the object on which government imposes and collects taxes. For example, if I am earning income, government will impose a tax on the income and collect income taxes. If a corporate, that is the company, is earning a profit, government will impose a tax on this, collect corporate taxes. If I am having an asset and if I sell this asset, and if the government imposes a tax on this, either in the form of long-term capital gains tax or a short-term capital gains tax, then this becomes a part of the tax base. So argument is simple here. The government data simply says that 5.85 million taxpayers are filing the IT returns for the first time ever. And this represents widening of the tax base. And widening of the tax base is essentially considered good for the government, because over a period of time, I hope you understand this, all the people who file income tax returns doesn't necessarily mean all of them will pay income taxes to the government. Because let's say my income is within the threshold, that is, let's say my income is 3.2 lakh rupees. I will file the income tax returns. I will claim a standard deduction, and ultimately the amount of taxes that I will end up paying will be 0 rupees for the government. So no doubt I am filing the income tax returns. That necessarily doesn't mean that I am going to pay income tax returns to the government. But widening of the tax base generally is referred to be a good indicator for the economy, because over a period of time, my income will not remain the same. I will start earning more and more income. And when my earnings will increase, automatically I'll end up paying the taxes to the government, because I'm already part of the income tax return filing ecosystem. So these are certain very important points associated with the IT returns, the highest number of IT returns which have been filed very recently by the income tax payers. Now associated with this, I have an MCQ. Please have a look at the question now. A decrease in the tax to GDP ratio of a country indicates which of the following? In fact, this is a question which was asked in the previous year by the UPSC board. First one, slowing economic growth rate. Second one, less equitable distribution of national income. Whenever the tax to GDP ratio comes down, what does it mean? Tax to GDP ratio is comparison between how much taxes you have collected divided by what is the value of the GDP. For example, in 1 year, if my GDP value is 100 crore rupees and my tax collection, either direct taxes as well as indirect taxes, total taxes collected is, let's say, 20 CR, then the tax to GDP ratio will become 20%. And please understand this, a higher tax to GDP ratio is always preferable for the economy. A higher tax to GDP ratio is always preferable. Now, a decrease in the tax to GDP ratio of a country indicates which of the following? Less equitable distribution of a national income? Absolutely no. The tax to GDP ratio does not give you any information regarding how national income is getting distributed. Whether are we achieving inclusive growth or exclusive growth, that cannot be determined just by looking at the tax to GDP ratio. Second statement is wrong. First statement, slowing economic growth rate. Slowing economic growth rate. Generally understand this. Whenever the economic growth rate will start slowing, we will also end up experiencing a change in the taxes collection as well. And that is generally the reason why we will end up having a decrease in the tax to GDP ratio. So right option for this is option A, only 1 is correct. So this is a question as well as the important factual information that is associated with the announcements done by the Finance Ministry regarding the record IT returns filed by the taxpayers in India. If you like this initiative, hit the like button. And if you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.